Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. Security footage shows what happened inside the deadly Uvalde school shooting. And Amber Heard's motion for a mistrial is denied after an issue with Juror 15. Plus, more than 1 year after a mother and son are found murdered, will charges soon be filed in the Murdoch murder mystery? And later, the inmate who once sparked a nationwide manhunt is now being charged in the death of the corrections officer who he ran off with. Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm your host, Brian Buckmire. For the first time, we're getting a look inside Robb Elementary School as police respond to a deadly shooting in Uvalde, Texas. It happened back in May when an 18-year-old gunman opened fire at the elementary school. 19 students and 2 teachers were killed in the massacre. The gunman was also killed. 17 others were injured. In the days following the shooting spree, law enforcement faced public scrutiny for their failure to react quickly. Reports say it took more than 1 hour for police to take down the shooter, as multiple 911 calls were made from inside the school, and several students inside yelled to police who were just outside. On Tuesday, Texas TV station KVUE and newspaper Austin American-Statesman obtained surveillance video from inside the school. We want to warn you, the footage is graphic and may be triggering to some. As the security footage continues, officers can be seen entering the school where they remain for more than an hour. Officers now face additional scrutiny as one can be seen checking his cell phone during the standoff and another later uses hand sanitizer. Joining us today is legal analyst Richard Schoenstein and co-host Terri Austin. Richard, hand sanitizing, checking their phones, waiting with shields as they hear children screaming again and again. This new video is revealing troubling facts, but what can be done legally with this video now that it's released?
Well, Brian, I think this video can be used as evidence if someone wants to bring a negligence claim against the city or the state for the response to this terrible, terrible incident. I hope also people will consider it when they address the narrative that the thing to fight a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Because here we had a whole hallway full of good guys with guns, vests, shields, other good guys, and they couldn't do anything. And before we go putting guns in the hand of teachers, we ought to consider if a well-armed and well-trained police officer can't do it, how could we expect a teacher to do it?
Richard, I would agree with that, and I'll add one more point as well. Years of training. All of them had that, and still they did not go in. Terri, many of the parents say they were blindsided by the release of the video. What are your thoughts about the parents not seeing the video before the public?
You know, these parents have already gone through multiple traumas, and having to see this 77-minute video before it was brought to their attention, before they had a chance to prepare themselves. It was leaked to the media, and it was shared by these 2 media outlets. And it was video from security cameras, body cameras, cell phone, 911. It had to be very difficult. As a parent, I can't even imagine having to see this on social media before you actually had a chance to view it. The mayor himself also was very upset that this happened. No one should have to go through this type of incident or see it before they had a chance to prepare themselves.
Absolutely. And of course, our thoughts go out to the parents and the families of these ones who've lost so much. And switching now to Colorado as jurors hear the police interrogation footage with one of the witnesses in the double homicide case of Kevin Dean Eastman, a man on trial for the killings of his ex-girlfriend and her new love interest 2 years ago. Eastman is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, tampering with a deceased human body, and tampering with physical evidence for allegedly killing Heather Frank and local musician Stanley Scott Sessions. Authorities say they were killed on separate days in February of 2020. Frank and Eastman both had arrest warrants in connection to Sessions' murder before Frank's body was found. Prosecutors say Eastman slit Sessions' throat in Frank's apartment and that Eastman fatally shot Frank in the chest twice to silence the only witness to Sessions' killing. They say he then hid her body on the property of his new employer, Troy Bonnell, who testified this week. Investigators say Eastman burned Sessions' body and was allegedly preparing to burn Frank's body when he was arrested at a nearby gas station. The jury witnessed the moment in the police interrogation video when Bonnell was told of Frank's body being on his property.
So here's the thing, I get information. I know it feels like I've been stalling for time here, and I have a little bit, because sometimes I get information that I'm not allowed to share, and I gotta wait until they let me share it.
Okay.
So when they were doing the search property, they did find a body.
What?
Yes, sir. And
Where?
that I'm not sure. Obviously, I wasn't there. I've been here with you, but they offered
Oh.
to tell that they found a body out on your property. They believe it's a female, so obviously you know what we're thinking. That it's Heather, so that's like.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah, I could see if I was in your position, I'd be pissed too. Like,
Yeah, I don't deserve this.
I'm sure, kind of like you're beyond tired.
Yeah.
But hopefully that helps you to understand why I need your help.
Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, charges could soon be filed in the Murdoch murder mystery out of South Carolina. But first, Amber Heard's hopes for a mistrial are dashed when a Virginia judge denies her motion. Welcome back. A Virginia judge denies Amber Heard's motion for a mistrial days after the actress says she didn't receive a fair trial due to confusion with a juror. On Wednesday, Judge Penney Azacarate denied all of Heard's motions, citing, quote, no evidence of fraud or wrongdoing related to juror number 15. Last week, juror 15 made headlines as Heard's team claimed he improperly served on the jury. While Judge Azacarate ruled the juror's name would be temporarily sealed, Heard's attorneys say the juror who took part in the trial has the same last name as the person called and lives at the same address. Heard's attorneys argued her due process rights were violated because of this. In court documents filed, Judge Azacarate notes juror voir dire was completed appropriately, and juror 15 accurately filled out his jury questionnaire. All this comes 1 month after a Virginia jury ruled largely in favor of Johnny Depp, awarding the movie star $15 million in damages stemming from the defamation case. The jury awarded Heard only $2 million in compensatory damages. Terri, if the judge says no fraud or no wrongdoings, then what does that mean about Heard's claim?
Well, Judge Azacarate essentially denied that motion, denied the claim, and the jury claim will be dropped. Juror 15 is free to go. There's not going to be a hearing. There's not going to be any evidence because the judge said that there is nothing there, no prejudice. Judge agreed that the due process was served here, that the jury was properly vetted. This particular juror was properly vetted. He sat for the entire trial. He listened to all of the evidence. He took his oath. He took his oath seriously. And the judge went on further to say that she is actually bound by the juror's decision. And so if that jury had unanimous decisions and they voted the way they did, then she can't undo that for something like this, some small mistake that caused no prejudice. So the claim is going to be dismissed, and we'll see if Heard's team comes up with anything else.
Yeah, Richard, with all motions denied, what's next? I guess not necessarily what's next. This is my better question. Is this the last we're going to hear about Depp and Heard, or is there more to come out of this case?
Oh, this is not the last. I think this show is going to keep playing. We are off to appeal now, I think. I would expect what I would call a kitchen sink style appeal, where she and her lawyers raise every issue they can come up with about the jury and the evidence and the motions and the judge and the trial. But here's the thing, they got to come up with a bond. They have to post almost an $11 million bond for the verdict in order to proceed with that appeal. So that would be the big question there. But if they can come up with the money, I expect an appeal.
All right, we'll see how this plays out. Not the last, I guess, we're going to hear of this case. And in other celebrity news, Twitter is suing Tesla CEO and SpaceX founder Elon Musk after he announced he's backing out of a deal to purchase the social media platform. Musk made the move in April to purchase Twitter for $44 billion, saying the site was limiting free speech. He said he wanted to take the company private, arguing he would be able to grow Twitter and make it more politically neutral. Musk and his lawyers say he's decided to back out of the deal, accusing Twitter of withholding information about the number of spam and bot accounts on the platform. In the merger, Twitter and Musk had an agreement that either would pay a $1 billion breakup fee if they were responsible for the deal falling through. Musk and his attorneys will have to prove Twitter breached the agreement in order to not pay that fine. Twitter says Musk's reversal of the deal caused irreparable harm to the platform and wreaked havoc on its stock price. Twitter alleges Musk operated in bad faith, saying he requested company information to potentially start a Twitter competitor. The social media site filed a lawsuit in Delaware where business disputes between corporations are frequently handled. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, once an inmate on the run, Vicky White is indicted for the death of the corrections officer who he escaped with. Plus, the Murdoch murder mystery, what charges we could soon expect for disgraced attorney Alec Murdoch. Welcome back. South Carolina attorney Alec Murdoch is soon expected to be indicted on murder charges for the 2021 shooting deaths of his wife and son, Maggie and Paul. Murdoch, who is already behind bars, is currently facing more than 80 counts of fraud and other charges for allegedly scamming former clients out of more than $8 million. Authorities also accuse Murdoch of defrauding the family of his former housekeeper of more than $4 million settlement after she died in an alleged slip and fall accident at his home. In June last year, Murdoch made national news when he said he came home to find his wife and 22-year-old son, who was facing charges of his own related to a fatal boat accident, shot dead on the family's 1,700-acre property. The disgraced attorney made headlines again when he allegedly hired a hitman to kill him so his surviving son, Buster, could benefit from a $10 million life insurance payout. His most recent charges also include money laundering as part of an alleged drug trafficking ring, as Murdoch had reportedly suffered from an opioid addiction for years. Several media outlets report South Carolina Law Enforcement Department agents met with Murdoch's family this week to inform them of the coming murder charges. Officials have not released any details as to what evidence has now led them to charge Murdoch in the slayings. Murdoch has pled not guilty to all charges filed against him so far, and he remains jailed on a $7 million bond. Terri, how exactly does a grand jury work, and what should we expect when they're done?
You know what, Brian, as a matter of state law, most states have some form of grand jury, and their function really is to examine the evidence. They can do that with documents, they can do that with witnesses, and they have to determine whether or not there's reasonable cause to hold a criminal defendant over for trial. In South Carolina, the grand jury can issue subpoenas for documents, and they can actually compel witnesses to testify in connection with the investigation. Now, usually the accused does not go and present evidence, and here that probably will be the case. And at the end of the process, there's a true bill that's issued in South Carolina, and that will show whether or not there is probable cause that a crime's been committed and that that crime has been committed by the actual person accused. So that's what the process will look like here in South Carolina. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Richard, Terri touched on it just a bit, but Murdoch could testify in the grand jury. He could give his, so to speak, 2 cents as to what happened. But do you think that's wise for him based on this case and how many open cases he has?
Yeah, I'd be really surprised, Brian, to see him testify. I mean, this guy has a morass of legal issues. He has so many things ongoing and up in the air. He's not going to want to testify unless he absolutely has to, and unless he has something absolutely great to say. I mean, if he had an ironclad alibi for this and wanted to offer it to the grand jury, I could see that. But short of that, I don't think he's going to open his mouth until he absolutely has to, and maybe not even then.
Yeah, and if he does testify and they don't believe that he did commit this crime, it's called a grand jury blowout, and he actually has the charges dismissed, and whether or not South Carolina wants to reinvestigate and recharge him, that's the other question, but it's a lot riding on that, but I agree with you. Unlikely he's going to testify. Well, also in South Carolina, the Tiger King star known as Doc Antle appears in federal court on charges of money laundering. Bhagavan Antle, whose real name is Kevin, rose to fame at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic when he was featured on the Netflix docuseries Tiger King. Antle was featured as an animal trainer and zoo operator and owner of a wildlife park in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Last month, Antle was arrested by the FBI and charged with laundering more than $500,000. Prosecutors say the money came from a smuggling operation that brought people across the Mexican border into the United States. Antle was later released on $250,000 bond. If convicted, he could spend 20 years behind bars. Antle also faces separate Virginia state charges in connection to animal cruelty and wildlife trafficking. When we come back, the inmate who escaped with a correction officer is now indicted in her death. Still ahead, we turn to Alabama for the case of Vicky and Casey White. Welcome back. In Florida, a series of motion hearings continue in the days leading up to the Parkland school shooting penalty phase. Right now, opening statements are expected to be presented next Monday, July 18th, in the case. After pleading guilty last October, the Parkland school shooter now faces a penalty phase trial in which a jury of his peers will determine whether he receives life in prison or the death penalty. On February 14, 2018, the then 19-year-old gunman opened fire at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. 17 people were killed and 17 more injured. After a string of delays, the penalty phase is expected to begin soon. Ahead of that, Judge Elizabeth Schreier has heard a series of motions over the past few weeks as both sides fight for evidence to be included or excluded from the coming case. On Monday, prosecutors noted what they believe are inaccuracies in a psychological report about the shooter. As prosecutors Jeff Marcus explains, one report noted that at age 12, the defendant couldn't understand 50 words. By comparison, a separate report notes that at age 6, he understood the complexity of beliefs around life and death.
When Mr. Cruz's father died, he was nearly 6 years of age. Ms. Browd stated that when she saw the defendant right after the death, he asked her, is my father going to heaven or hell? And he was not yet 6 years of age. So clearly someone who could not even form 50 words at 12 years old, at less than 6, wasn't going to be able to understand concepts of heaven and hell and articulate such a sentence. And Ms. Browd articulated many more words than that he was aware of. So it's clear that the Vineland answer, which was that he did not understand 50 words at 12 years of age, is an incorrect answer.
And an Alabama inmate is indicted in the death of a corrections officer months after the pair led investigators on an 11-day chase across multiple states. As Law&Crime Daily reported, inmate Casey White and corrections officer Vicky White were last seen leaving the Lauderdale County Jail in Alabama. Investigators say the pair was not related, but believe they developed a romantic relationship while spending time together. The couple was on the run for days, sparking a nationwide manhunt that ended in Evansville, Indiana, where surveillance video caught Casey White on camera at a car wash. After that, the pair led authorities on a high-speed chase that ended in a crash. According to the U.S. Marshals Service, Casey White emerged from the crash saying, quote, "Please help my wife. She just shot herself in the head and I didn't do it." Vicky White later died in the hospital. Officials now say Casey White has been indicted for felony murder, alleging that while committing first-degree escape, he, quote, caused the death of Vicky White at the time of his escape. Casey White was already serving a 75-year prison sentence. He also faces a separate capital murder charge. Richard, why do you think the prosecution is charging Casey White with felony murder and not murder, and doesn't make sense?
It makes sense to me. I mean, I think they don't think that Casey White pulled the trigger. So the felony murder rule is invoked when somebody dies while the defendant is committing a dangerous felony. And it's not the intent of the defendant to cause the death, but it happens as a proximate result of the crime that's being committed. So what they're saying is she killed herself in the course of their flight. I've never seen the felony murder rule applied to a suicide like this, so it's going to be really interesting, but I understand the theory.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they say that her suicide was caused by him. But Terri, Casey was already serving 75 years in jail. Should we expect a trial in this case, or do you think he will just take a plea deal from the prosecution?
Well, I think we might see a trial just because this is such a heinous situation. He's already in jail. He's escaping from jail. The person he's escaping with is now dead. But having said that, this case is ripe for a plea deal. As you said, he's already awaiting trial on capital murder charges, and that's for killing 58-year-old Connie Ridgway. It was a stabbing back in 2015. That trial is expected to come up in December. And he's already serving a 75-year prison sentence. He's in his late 30s. And so no matter what, he's going to be in jail. And that sentence is for convictions of robbery. He went on this crime spree and attempted to kill his ex-girlfriend. So this is really a plea deal. If they do one, that would make complete sense, because what's the point of spending all the time, effort, and money on a trial when we already have this person serving 75 years and he's coming up for another death and another trial for the killing of Connie Ridgway? So we'll see what happens, but that makes sense.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who watches him while those cases are pending. Well, thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.